And now, The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Macro and Risks Management Conference 2025. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply. Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday edition of The Money Show. My name is Motheo Khoaripe. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you want to join our conversations, any of them that we have tonight, you can WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702. Now, some good news coming out today. Annual inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages went down to 5.2% in August from 5.7% in July. I know many of you will say we're not feeling it when it comes to our budgets for groceries. Now, several food categories recorded lower rates, including dairy products and eggs, fruits and nuts, and vegetables and fish. One of those positive proteins also coming in lower. So your grocery budget will see a welcome change in terms of some essential items, but not meat. Meat is still quite high. You'll be going to less price this summer, essentially. Not many invites. Steak is up more than 28% per kilo. Or you might get some affordable options like ostrich steaks, but I'm not sure if that's a favorite for everyone around the price. So we'll be talking about that inflation number and also what that inflation number means for the South African Reserve Bank announcing interest rates tomorrow. So what to expect from the MPC? Botha, the head of fixed income at Ashburton Investments, joins us for that conversation. Also joining us is Mpho Molopyane, the chief economist at Forbes Investments, talking there about interest rates. Then we talk more food, about securing Africa's food future through innovation and investments, and a bit of a panel there as well. Wandile Sihlobo, the author and agricultural economist at Agricultural Business Chamber, are joining us for that conversation. We've all seen the price of gold going up. Gold prices are skyrocketing more than 40% in 2025, surpassing the $3,600 mark. We'll be talking about what that means for things like Krugerrands and whether you should be investing. Rael Dembi, CEO of the South African Gold Coin Exchange and the Coin Shop, are joining us for that conversation. Later on the show, we have Business Unusual, talking universities giving the green light to artificial intelligence in terms of academic assignments. Graham Cordrington, a futurist and partner at Tomorrow Today, are joining us for that conversation. Now, when you purchase your car, it's often an emotional time, a lot of happiness going around, standing in front of your car with the big red ribbon. But everything that happens on the day and more is actually charged through on-the-road fees. Now, consumer ninja Wendy Nola will be telling us about those on-the-road fees and how you can negotiate them lower. Later, our Shapeshifter, Aubrey, founder of Moja and Foods, will join us as our Shapeshifter tonight. All that and more on The Money Show. Let's talk money.
The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702.
702.
Let's then go to gold. It's been quite a safe haven this year, right? The introduction of those higher U.S. tariffs. We've seen a lot of geopolitical tensions, a lot of nervousness and cautiousness by traders on the markets, and that's led to the precious metals like gold seeing a skyrocket, more than 40%. Gold has gone up by this year to $3,600 an ounce. So quite a big number there. And if you've been invested, you'll be smiling all the way to the bank. If you still want to be invested, listen to this particular conversation. Rael Dembi, the CEO of the South African Gold and Coin Exchange and the Coin Shop, joining us for this particular conversation. Not a lot of people looking at Krugerrands these days. There were big advertisements around them back in the day, but gold is now back and it's hot and it's looking like an investment that will bring a lot of returns.
Good evening, Motheo. Thanks for having me. As gold bugs, we've always been there, and we would like to say we told you so, but the reality is gold has its ups and downs, but a Krugerrand first launched in 1967 was 27 Rand. Today it's trading at 69,000 Rand. So from a rand hedge point of view, it is priced in US dollars. So when the dollar strengthens and the rand weakens, we get a bit of a bump. But on the other hand, the gold price is doing what it's doing because the world is taking notice. And there's big banks, there's big governments, institutions are piling up and piling into gold as we speak.
Now, Rael, when we look at gold as an investment and other precious metals, it's often cyclical, right? We've seen the price of gold go down a few years, but if you hold things like gold coins, the Kruger Rand, and hold them and wait for those cycles to come, you can still getting on the earnings.
I mean, absolutely, as time tells, holding gold as a safe haven, you wouldn't call it a traditional investment. You wouldn't. It's almost like the insurance policy against your other investments. So the reality is holding 10-15% of your entire portfolio in gold. It's proving to be the case now, where stocks and bonds and shares and property are slowly going down the other way, and there's a lot of tension in the world. Markets are a bit shaky. This new announcement tonight, all of these little scares and sort of worries are the complete opposite to gold. It usually goes the other way. It should give you comfort. It should give you warmth. It should give you that liquidity. And holding gold, holding Kruger Rands with you or in storage, as long as they're safe, I think it's definitely something that everybody should have a little piece of.
Now, I'm on the Scoin website, the Scoin Shop website, and I'm looking at a 1 ounce proof South African Kruger Rand gold coin going for 99,000. Have you had a lot of people walk through your doors these past few months as the price of gold has surged?
Absolutely. We're fortunate enough to be in that position. A proof Kruger Rand is slightly different. It's a collectible. There's only a certain amount of them minted each year. It's got a nice shiny finish to it, and it has some collectible benefits as well as some capital gains benefits versus a regular Kruger Rand. Some would buy maybe half proof, half Kruger Rand bullion. Some might like silver. Some might like some really old antique ZAR coin from 130 years ago. Someone might like a brand new coin from a fancy mint like the Paris Mint or the British Royal Mint. So it depends on taste. It depends on maybe heritage, something you believe in. It really depends. And we like to make this fun and exciting and warm and friendly. Gold shouldn't be scary. Gold shouldn't be something you shouldn't be able to get into. And now is still a great time because the world isn't as stable as we all hope it is.
And as it used to be. And how does somebody get their money back? Because I'm sure that's always a question when you invest your money. What returns do you get through a Kruger Rand? Do you have to sell it to someone else, or how do they get it back?
So Kruger Rands are extremely liquid. It's yours. You can take it home with you. There's gold dealers. There's coin dealers. We have been around for 50 years, so we like it. If you buy from us, you can come and sell it back to us. The Kruger Rand is the most popular coin in the world and the first ever coin for the masses. So buying and selling should be easy and fun, and that's how we do it.
All right, that was Rael Dembi, CEO of the South African Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop, talking about the rise in the price of gold and how you can invest in things like Kruger Rands.
The Money Show will give you all the tools you need to navigate the complicated world of economics and commerce, even if you're not a numbers person. The Money Show
with Motheo Khoaripe,
6 to 8 p.m. Making money make sense
on 702 and Cape Talk.
Now, Africa as a continent is not food secure, hit by things like conflict and instability, climate change of late, environmental factors as well, inadequate infrastructure and other economic factors like funding. But how can we make sure that the continent has better food systems, making them more sustainable and making sure that we're food secure? Joining me for this conversation is Wandile Sihlobo, author and agricultural economist at Agricultural Business Chamber. Now, Wandile, when we are going through the shopping aisles, getting our veggies and our groceries, we never really think it could run out. But with just the issues we're having around water, the environment, people being displaced on the continent, that's a very, very big reality for millions on the African continent.
Indeed, Motheo, and I think it's important we separate South Africa from the rest of the continent or sub-Saharan Africa region. And I know many people don't like this, but it is true in agriculture in a sense that when you look at the output and productivity in sub-Saharan Africa region, South Africa stand alone as an exception on that. But I'm separating it because you have to ask a question of what is it then that has made South Africa to be a net exporter, gaining close to $14 billion on export of food products, which is half of what we produce, while the rest of the continent spend around $80 billion on imports. And that hinges on a couple of things, but I think the core of it, it's around the land governance, it's around the better public infrastructure, it is around the embrace of large or medium-scale farmers, and of course, many of the infrastructural things that you have said. But I would say at the top, it's also just the policy aspect of embracing science, better seed cultivars and genetics. And I think it is in this context where we have to focus on all of these hindrances, where we can begin to think about how do we strengthen food systems, and perhaps how do we even begin to be at a journey where we can produce for the world market. But so far, really, I would say the policy and the politics are what, to a certain extent, constrain the growth of Africa's food and agricultural sector.
We often have these highbrow conversations when it comes to food systems and innovation around agriculture, as we are now. But are these technologies, these innovations, these policies getting to the subsistence farmers on the African continent, those that have small holds and they growing their own food? How are we making sure that those systems in those communities, bear fruit for them when it comes to making sure that they're food secure as a community, but also as a greater continent?
Look, I'm partially an academic, which allows me a space to be frank on these things. My sense is that this is not only just on a high-level conversation and all of that. The core thing is that if many African governments had a clear intent that they want to increase their agricultural output, the one thing they could start on is saying, what are these seed cultivars that South Africa is using that they don't have? And then they open up the legislation for that, because it's not the issue of availability or no availability, it's that the regulations block certain cultivars in a number of countries, with the exception of here. And once they do that and the ideologies stay on the side and we focus on embracing science, you will now put the farmers in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, in Tanzania on the same scale where they can compete with the South African farmers. The second aspect then, you would have to deal with the issue of land governance. I know it takes time, but it's fundamental because, again, with the exception of South Africa, much of the region, about 90% or so of rural land is still pretty much informal. You cannot think about the capital flowing in this. And I think if we want to seriously boost Africa's food production, we have to get to a sync of saying we will move from being smallholder to being medium scale and being large scale farming sector. Not that we are embracing industrial at the expense of others, but I think you need all typologies of farmers. But I think the romanticization of smallholders is not helping anyone when it comes to food output in the continent.
Well, that was Wandile Sihlobo, author an agricultural economist at Agricultural Business Chamber, talking about some of the solutions that are needed to make sure Africa's food systems become more sustainable ahead of the G20. The B20 South Africa Sustainable Food Systems and Agricultural Task Force are putting forward their recommendations for this particular topic. Things like enhancing labor and capital productivity, ensuring climate resilience and improving livelihoods, and more importantly, accelerating trade and making sure that there is adequate funding for all.
The Money Show.
The markets.
Few hours away from the US Fed rate decision coming out later this evening, just a little after the Money Show. In fact, the Dow Jones Industrial still positive ahead of that number. S&P 500 weaker, while the Dow Jones added 300 points rather, while the Nasdaq, which trades mostly tech shares, was down 0.5%. Let's get into those markets and look at what is the situation that is likely to play out. Chris Stewart, portfolio manager at 91, joins us for that conversation. Chris, are you seeing the pressure from the White House and President Donald Trump finally telling for the US Fed in terms of cutting those interest rates?
Yeah, good evening, Motheo. I think, the likelihood is we're going to see a 25 basis point rate cut out of the Fed. And I think there's been enough softening in the labor data to justify that. Some market commentators expecting to see a bigger rate cut than that. There's probably a 10% chance of a 50 basis point rate cut priced in. I think that's highly unlikely. And ironically, I think the pressure that the President of the United States and his regime have put on the Federal Reserve, and obviously the Federal Reserve will be very keen to emphasize their independence. I think the pressure that's put to bear has in fact raised the bar for a 50 basis point rate cut. I think things would have to be substantially worse than they might otherwise be, because I think the Fed is going to be, erring in the direction of proving their independence. Nonetheless, I think 25 basis points is on the table, but I don't think we'll see more than that. That's probably what's priced into the market. I think that's the right outcome. I think 50 basis points would actually probably put the fear of God into the market anyway, because people would be worrying, well, how bad is it going to get? So we see 25 basis points out of the Fed, and I guess that raises the more interesting question. And, you've just been talking about food, and we've just had a pretty good inflation print in South Africa today, with inflation coming in lower than anticipated, largely on the back of the food category, with food price inflation coming in quite materially lower than expected. I think it makes tomorrow's meeting from our own monetary authorities a live meeting. Yeah. It's for the first time in a while we're actually debating which way is it going to go. It's been a fairly clear decision, I think, for the last number of MPCs. I have the unenviable privilege of being on the radio on a Wednesday night, so you've always got to opine on what you think the decision is going to be on Thursday. So I'll go out on a limb and I'll say we probably are, and I know this is not a consensus view, but I suspect we may well see a 25 basis point rate cut tomorrow, notwithstanding the fact that we saw reasonably robust retail sales data today. And I think the retail sales data today may be a little bit of a function of a base of a very weak month in the same prior year, rather than any particular signs that consumer spending is robust, or that the consumer in South Africa has any a fine degree of health.
Well, it doesn't get more frank than that. Chris Stewart, portfolio manager at 91, expecting a 25 basis point cut from the US Fed. But the conversation much more interesting when you think about the South African Reserve Bank and the Monetary Policy Committee and what decision they make. In the meantime, the rand steady, I think, around 17 Rand 35 against the US dollar. It hasn't weakened any further than that. At 20 Rand 54 cents against the euro and 23 Rand 70 cents against the British pound. But these interest rate cuts, quite interesting for us as consumers, are those who have larger purchases like homes and cars, and those that are trying to repay some of those debts. So keep a keen eye on those numbers.
You're with Motheo Khoaripe on 702 and Cape Talk.
Welcome back to The Money Show. It's been quite a results-heavy week for the JSE. Some more numbers coming out of the local boss Momentum Investments, putting out some good, solid numbers today. They had a very, very good year with headline earnings at 6.2 billion rand, a 41% jump on last year's high base. We talk now to Janet Marais, Momentum Group CEO, joining us to unpack some of these numbers. Janet, just start looking at the South African consumer in all of your segments that you serve. What are you seeing? Is there more hunger to make sure that people are covered through pensions and annuities, or are you seeing a more strained South African consumer?
Hello, Motheo. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Look, actually, I think there's two answers to what you are asking me. I think on the one hand, one of probably the only positive leftovers of COVID is that the consumer actually, through that crisis that, no one really planned for, maybe really felt the importance and started to realize the absolute importance of having a financial plan, of having life cover, of making sure that, in the event that life happens, they have the necessary cover in place. And I think that is still out there, that we see that almost in spite of people being under financial strain, the last thing that they would do is to cancel a life policy. So I think on that hand, definitely people experienced, almost that hardship in a way that now prevent them from cancelling those. On the other hand, and those are some of the numbers that I mentioned today, in the last year, since the two-pot system have actually come about, we have seen 350,000 people coming to take money out of their pension funds. That was, in our case, 5.4 billion rand. Wow. That was actually withdrawn from pension funds. The worst number for me is that 19% of those people are older than 50. Now, if you think about the fact that a person like that is less than 10 years or maybe 10 years from retirement, but they are so desperate that they would actually come and make those withdrawals that they could probably never replace before they get to retirement, it actually shows you almost this tale that there are so many people under such bad financial distress, and we would hope that that money didn't go into kind of lifestyle choices or gambling or other things, but that people actually did use it to make their lives better. But then we also see that people do hold on to at least their life cover. And I think one of the best things, in South Africa is that people who are employed mostly also save towards their retirement through their pension funds. Yeah. And the fact that people don't have a choice there is probably, a really good thing in the long run.
Yeah, it also speaks to, the recent trend we've seen of unretirement, people working way past their retirement years because they just haven't saved up enough. But let's talk now about, those companies within Momentum that have, produced the good numbers. The Momentum Corporate, which offers, of course, annuities and pension savings, and then Momentum Investments as well, which saw normalized headline earnings up 15% at 963 million rand. So that's quite good a business over the reporting period. And also speaking to what you were talking about, that people just want to be covered.
Yeah, so, in fact, there's no time to talk about each one of the 9 businesses that we have in our diversified group. But I think what is amazing, for us in terms of, the uplift in our earnings this year was actually caused by the fact that we have 9 different businesses and business units in the group, and 8 of the 9 actually improved on their earnings from last year. And last year was already a record year for us. The only business where we didn't see the same is in Africa, but we're also busy, with quite a big restructuring in our African business. Now, that all adds up, and I think often you have a diversified business and you always hope that at least half your businesses will do well to cover for the other half that might have some difficulty. Where this year, like I say, 8 out of 9 businesses, our short-term business have done incredibly well. Metropolitan, has had, stellar earnings. And as you've mentioned, Momentum Investments, also Momentum Corporate. I think it is that combination of when a plan comes together, when all your businesses fire on all of their cylinders, that you can actually come up with the kind of results like what we've had this time.
You also invested in India, Momentum controlling around 44% of Aditya Birla Health Insurance. There are some movements there in terms of a possible initial public offering. What's in the war chest and what do you plan to see in the next year?
Yeah, so I do want to take the emphasis off the possible IPO a little bit, and maybe just, tell you a little bit more about where that business is. So it is at the moment the fastest growing health insurer in the Indian market. And I mean, we stagger at the amounts, the numbers there. I think we've got more than 30 million clients, who's got health insurance with us. It's also quite strong on wellness. The Indian people are getting more and more aware of also kind of this whole movement towards wellness. And we are we are one of 3 shareholders in that business. Now, always in the long run, when you keep on investing and putting capital into a business to help it grow, you would get the question that says, now, where's this going to end? Are you just going to remain a shareholder, or would you consider somewhere in the future that maybe an IPO is on the cards? And I want to say that, yes, of course, it's always on the cards, but it's not something that we're planning, for the imminent future now. And simply not because at the moment, with the opportunity to keep on growing at the growth rates that we're able to grow in that market, there is there's almost no desire for us to dilute our shareholding in that business. We are a very willing investor to help that business grow and grow, as fast as it is at the moment. So a lot of upside for us in that business. We also like the fact that it's in the Indian market. It is a fast-growing market. And it's uncorrelated to South Africa. So in a way, it buffers us, from everything that happened to our consumers here. But now the Indian market, very, very thin margins. You've got to run a very, very wonderfully kind of lean business in order to be able to run a business profitably at those kinds of very, very lean margins that we have there. So a very different business actually to how we run our businesses in South Africa.
Jeanette Marais, thank you very much for joining us this evening on The Money Show, the Momentum Group CEO, talking about the company's numbers, how they did in India, but also, more importantly, how the South African business is looking up as more consumers look to be covered for those annuity and pensions.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Macro and Risk Management Conference 2025. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Welcome back to The Money Show, about 9 minutes to 7. Now let's tackle the Monetary Policy Committee. They've been meeting from earlier in the week, and they'll announce the country's latest interest rates on Thursday at around 3 o'clock. That time of the year where we have to find out whether there'll be another cut or whether there'll be another hold from the South African Reserve Bank. We're going to be chatting to Albert Botha, Head of Fixed Income at Ashburton Investment, and Mpho Molopyane, Chief Economist at Forbes Investment. Welcome to The Money Show.
Thank you. Good evening.
So let's create a little bit of an MPC here on The Money Show between you two. The last number in terms of the repo rate was 7%. Do you see the vote going for a cut or hold this time around? We'll get into the aspects after you answer that.
So I think that before today, there was probably a relatively broad split between economists on whether there'd be a cut or a hold. I think after the surprise in South African inflation today, where it surprised to the downside relatively meaningfully, I think there's going to be more of a tilt towards a cut camp. I specifically actually think we will be seeing a cut from the MPC tomorrow from 7% to 6.75%.
Those headline inflation forecasts that we had earlier in the week, just how much of a big role are they going to be playing in terms of a decision tomorrow? We know that there's a new sort of target around 3%, the bottom of the 3% that the SARB is looking at. Is that going to play a major role in terms of the expected headline inflation going forward?
It's certainly a factor. I think there's going to be a number of things that play a role. But this downside surprise in inflation is meaningful. This SARB wants to move inflation expectations down to 3% in line with their new preferred target. The other thing that I think is also going to be playing a meaningful role specifically for the SARB is the fact that there's currently an almost 100% probability being priced in of the United States Federal Reserve, the Fed, also cutting in this month. And I think those two factors combined, along with the relatively slow growth in South Africa and the struggling job market, means that we are likely going to be seeing a cut tomorrow.
Mpho, let's bring you into this conversation here. A lot to decide on for the MPC. It's not likely to be unanimous. At least I don't expect it to be, because there's a lot to think about. But when you look at the Monetary Policy Committee and what they've had to consider in terms of volatility in the market, the US tariffs that we were slapped with last month, looking at the inflation forecast, but also the new regime of that target between 3 to 6%, with the bottom at 3%. What's there to decide for them? Is there room to wiggle for a cut?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not slam dunk, I must admit. We are broadly aligned with consensus in a sense that they keep the repo rate unchanged tomorrow. But, even having said that, as I indicated, it's not slam dunk. I think a lot of factors for them to consider. So firstly, the low inflation target, which they announced at the July meeting, is going to be a major factor for them to take into consideration. Because if you think about it, they do have credibility in terms of achieving the previous target of 4.5. But they now have to establish new credibility in terms of achieving inflation at 3%. And if you look at where the current inflation is, currently printed at 3.3, yes, it did surprise to the downside, but it's still higher than the 3% target, which they now, looking to target. And in addition to that, if you look at the outlook for inflation, right, even the SARB's own projections at the July meeting were showing that inflation is expected to drift higher in the next coming months. So that's going to challenge, this new inflation target regime that they're trying to achieve, as well as bringing inflation expectations to be anchored at around 3%. So, those are the factors which they are going to navigate. And also, just speaking on inflation expectations, yes, they did come down quite significantly, actually, to around 4.2%. And if you look at the 2-year and 5-year inflation expectations in particular at 4.2, that's the lowest on record, right? But it's still not at 3%. And for the SARB in particular, the difficulty is going to be, or the challenge rather, in the next coming months is that will inflation expectations remain, will they continue to drift lower? Or as inflation ticks higher in the next coming months, will inflation expectations also now begin to tick higher? Because they do tend to be quite mixed. They're not necessarily all anchored. So, those are the factors I think will likely keep the SARB to hold at tomorrow's meeting. But on the other hand, they could say that, monetary policy affects the economy with a 4-quarter lag. That's usually the understanding when we look at econometric models. And they could say that the forecast is for inflation to reach the 3% target in the third quarter of 2026. There's really nothing that monetary policy can do to affect inflation between now and the second quarter of 2026. So, that ball is already out of their hands. And they could say, because they are a forward-looking SARB, then decide to cut the policy rate.
Look, South Africans are in the real economy. They probably appreciate the thinking that goes into setting interest rates, but cost of living still quite high. Even with that inflation number going down for food and non-alcoholic beverages, it still feels like your rand is not stretched enough to get you all that you need to get to the end of the month. Would it be a positive for an interest rate to come now instead of later to try and balance it out for those that are heavily indebted and are repaying some of these higher bonds and car payments?
Yeah, definitely it would be positive, right? So like, for instance, if you just look at someone with a 1 million bond payment, if the SARB does decide to cut by about 25 basis points, I don't think they, do more than that if they do decide to cut. Yeah. You're likely looking at that putting back around, just 170 Rand back into your pocket. Yes, it does not sound like it's significant, but if you look at the cumulative cuts since they started cutting, right, which has, would, so far it has been around 125 basis points. So if they do cut tomorrow, it would be around 150 basis points. So, it would be significant in terms of like the cumulative cuts that they have effected so far.
Yeah, if you think about petrol, you think about food, 170 Rand can go a really long way. Thank you to Albert Botha, head of fixed income at Ashburton Investment, and Mpho Molopyane, chief economist at Forbes Investments, giving us what they expect of the Monetary Policy Committee tomorrow as the SARB prepares to give us the latest interest rate number. Most analysts are expecting that the SARB will hold, but that was before that a lower inflation number came through from Stats SA, with some now saying we can expect at least a cut of 25 basis points. Time now is 7 o'clock. Your Eyewitness News up next.
And now, The Money Show with Motheo Khoaripe
on 702. Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, proud host of the Macro and Risk Management Conference 2025. ABSA is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply. Now, something quite strange is happening, and something more confusing, I guess, for universities is also happening. Artificial intelligence is worming its way through into the country's academics. Is using generative AI cheating? A few weeks ago, UCT said no, it isn't. They announced that they would no longer require students to confirm they hadn't used AI in completing assignments. We have futurist researcher Graham Codrington on the line in Business Unusual tonight. A very funny time to meander then for universities in the country looking at how artificial intelligence works. We'll have that conversation in a moment.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
Business Unusual is brought to you by Business Outsurance. Visit outsurance.co.za to switch and save today. Tonight, talking artificial intelligence and how it's affecting academics, how universities are also meandering the space, because a lot of young people, of course, and now those that are going to varsities using this particular technology openly. Graham Codrington joining us on the line for Business Unusual. Looking back at how we were educated, Graham, I don't know how far your years go back, but, technologies like these would have helped me a great deal.
Good evening, Motheo. And I agree with you. I think this is a very interesting conversation, not just for universities, but also for any business that includes both professionals and people who are using their brain power, so-called knowledge workers. It's coming up to nearly 3 years anniversary since generative AI was introduced. And I actually think it's quite impressive that UCT is one of the first universities in the world to just say, you know what, if you're going to use generative AI, use it. But your question is quite right. I think I'm a bit older than you, Motheo, and anybody who's older than 50, maybe I can help you to not be that grumpy old person looking at today's young people, strangely, because those of us who went to school in the 1980s, we will remember the introduction of calculators for the matric maths exam. And I was matriculated in 1988, and I remember that my grandfather, who was an inspector of education, thought that it was going to be the end of the world. He was one of those guys who could do amazing mental mathematics, and he thought that our generation of young people in the 1980s and 90s having calculators would mean that we wouldn't understand the basics of trigonometry and calculus, that we wouldn't know how to even do 2 + 2 in our heads. And maybe he was right. We've all got calculators on our computers, and I know that these days I check whether the tip I've added is correctly added up on the restaurant bill before I put the total. I check it on the calculator, not in my head. But what actually happened, Motheo, over the years is not what my grandfather was expecting. Instead of us dumbing everybody down, What's actually happened in the last 30 years or so is we've raised the base. So now the mathematics that young people are learning in matric today is probably similar to what my generation was learning in first year varsity. So calculators allowed us to not dumb down the clever kids, but actually raise the base of everybody else. And that meant we could teach higher level maths, and it did mean that the teachers had to change. And maybe that's the point of my story this evening, is that when you know that your students have access to a piece of technology that can give them some of the answers, you do have to change the questions, and you have to change the way that you question them. And I think that's what UCT are challenging their lecturers to do. And I think there will be a ripple into the professional world as well.
I mean, I remember exams where you were handed another extra piece of paper to try and work out the sums. Then we got to, maths higher grade, and then you were handed the calculator. Couldn't believe your life, but maths was still tough, even with the calculator in hand. Now, looking at, how education would be shaped going forward using generative AI, I think, is it a matter of people not understanding the technology and maybe trying to fend off something they don't understand instead of just welcoming it in terms of enhancing education going forward?
That's a great question, Motheo, and this is really why I thought this topic might be interesting for the Business Unusual slot this week, because contrast to UCT, just last week, I was with one of the big consulting companies, working with them and talking to them about AI. And they've got great AI tools that they've developed, and they're looking at agentic AI and all these good things into the future. But the one big question that didn't seem to have an answer was, how do we train the junior staff? Again, apologies, this is supposed to be a future-focused segment. I'm going into history this evening. But after school and studies, I went to KPMG, and I did articles at KPMG. And those first 2 years of articles, to be honest, for a guy who had a BCom and was kind of pretty smart, it really didn't feel like I was stretching myself, doing creditors recons and bank recons and stock counts and so on. But the point of those first 2 or 3 years in your profession, whether it's accounting or auditing or legal or engineering, the point of it is you learn the basics of your profession. You learn those building blocks that then help you to become that top quality professional later in your career. Now, what if we don't ever need a human being to do those basics? Because that's what these big consulting companies and legal and engineering and auditing companies are doing. They're saying whatever a first-year clerk or a second-year clerk used to do, we can get the machine to do that. And I think that's right. But here's where I think we've got to have a conversation, is if you don't have the basic building blocks, if you've let a machine do your thinking for you, and then you hit something which is unusual or different or requires an application of skills, you might not have enough basic building blocks to be able to come up with a new idea. So that's a long way around to answer your excellent question, but I think we've got to still find a balance. Find a balance of using the new technology and tools that are available, but also realizing we can't outsource proper professional thinking to machines. And I'm not quite sure we know where the balance is between those two things at the moment.
I understand the scrapping of AI detectors, but I would be swayed to at least have university students show maybe their prompts, how they got to that idea, the brainstorming of the particular assignments that they need to complete as part of the attachments to the assignment, just to see how the AI is being used. I think it will be also a great help to see how, from a lecturer's point of view, how the students are still using the AI to think for themselves.
Yeah, and one final story from history. So when I was doing tax at WITS in the 1990s, we convinced our lecturers to make it an open book exam. And just like you experienced, Motheo, when you were handed the calculator, at first you think, oh, wow, this is amazing. I've got access to the Tax Act while I'm sitting in the exam. What you didn't realize is that your teachers were ahead of you. They raised the game, making the assignments and the questions harder, because if you've got access to the underlying data or the underlying knowledge, the real question is, can you apply it? And that's, I think, the secret here, Motheo, is that in the university, we've got to change the questions we ask. We can't ask somebody to do a book summary anymore. We can't ask somebody to give us the 3 reasons that the Second World War started, because they can just ask ChatGPT to give them that answer. Now we need application. And that's what I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see better questions requiring deeper insight that can't be replicated by the machine. And in the professional world, I'm excited not to see the power of ChatGPT to replace anybody in businesses, but rather to augment their skills. For me, the best use of generative AI is to take somebody who is already good at what they do and give them a little bit of an extra edge. To go back to what I said about the calculator, we're not trying to dumb down the clever people. We're trying to raise the base for everybody so that everybody can be clever, and the really clever people can be even cleverer when they use technology in addition to their own brain. So for me, it's both and, rather either or.
Well, that is Business Unusual with Graham Cordrington, futurist and partner at Tomorrow Today, talking to us there about the use of generative AI. UCT saying it's not going to, have students tell them that they use AI for assignments. It's scrapped that particular thing, and it's going to be brave enough to let them use AI and also some of their thinking in their assignments. In the professional setup, very interesting to see how that will work.
The Money Show.
Consumer Ninja.
Around this time, every Wednesday on The Money Show, we cover your consumer rights with our consumer ninja, Wendy Nola, joining us to talk about this week's rights that you should definitely know. If you are a road user and you use your car or looking to buy a new one, you should be listening to us. We're talking about on-the-road fees. Now, it seems car buyers are stuck with dealerships and their car finance partners adding the controversial on-the-road fee to contracts. But thanks to a Supreme Court of Appeal ruling, at least they are now forced to be a lot more transparent. And Wendy Nola will tell us more about that. The on-the-road fee, a controversial one. It's for cleaning, registration, and all sorts of things when you buy your car. Can you explain how it works?
Yeah, so technically the National Credit Act allows the dealerships to add the, licensing and registration and a tank of petrol, and I forget the other thing. But what has been happening for many years is that the dealers then add on a fee. Some call it on the road fee, some call it a dealership fee, where it's normally just lumped on one big lump sum, and it's not broken down unless the savvy consumer says, what is it? And then there's a bit of thumbsuck that goes on, right? They'll say it's for doing the checks, the pre-sale checks, it's for the valet, it's for the, we've got to prepare the car, sort the sound system out, all of these things. But in most other industries, that's all built into the selling price, right? And so there's a transparency around the price, whereas the feeling by the National Credit Regulator, who's been trying to use the courts to stop this practice, to stop the banks, the car finances, from financing deals that have this on the road fee in it. And long story short, they lost, and so they took an appeal to the ultimate apex court, the Supreme Court of Appeal, which last week, it's a complicated ruling, and it involved 3 separate rulings that were all considered in this one case, because the NCR, the regulator, was using the financial services arms of the 3 big German marques, VW, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz, as sort of test cases, really. And so it went before the SCA, and in short, the SCA said, well, they can charge this fee, the dealerships and their financing banks, but they have to be transparent about it. So it can't just somehow be this fee that's dropped in there without any explanation. They have to break it down, which is quite delicious.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I even had one dealership tell me years ago that, I said, I'll break it down. I mean, this is years ago before it was really in the public eye, thanks to the regulator. And I remember the one did this 20-point breakdown and included a percentage of the valet worker's salary and it was interesting. And
sometimes
of course,
you wonder what's that got to do with me.
Yeah, and of course also people feel so have warm fuzzies when they get the champagne and the flowers.
It's an
and
emotional decision.
And
right?
social photo ready thing. And they're paying for that in the fee. But anyway, so now it has to be broken down. And I think that is... It's a consolation prize, but I mean, I'm going to be very interested to see those first deals coming through with, with that breakdown there, and whether they're going to all work to a template or all do their own thing, or how they're going to manage that.
I think there are thousands of motorists in the country who didn't know they were paying for the ribbon and the photo opportunity and the drink that comes with the new wheels.
Of course they are. It's
you
all
just
built
think
into
they're
that
being
fee.
nice to you because you just bought a car.
I know, shame. But yeah, I think also the thing is, Motheo, if it's broken down, this is an opportunity when you know what you're being charged. Now you have an opportunity, and what consumers must really know is to negotiate around that. I mean, it's boom time for the dealers now. They're selling loads. The numbers are really high, but it's not going to necessarily stay that way. So I would say, push back on some of those fees, at least get that fee reduced. Don't let them tell you it's compulsory. There's no legal requirement for them to do it. So, I would say push back, drive a hard bargain around those fees.
So this is a little bit of a win then.
It is. I think anything that forces service providers to be more transparent is always a win.
Because you can just opt out of the ribbon. I don't want it, so... What then?
Yes, keep your ribbon. That's the thing. That's interesting. Yeah, keep the ribbon. I mean, I've been writing about this for such a long time. It was quite a long time ago. I bought my last new car, and when I went to collect it, there was barely enough petrol in the tank for me to get to the nearest fuel station, and I was fine with that because part of it is the tank, is the fuel, but that is allowed for in the Act. Ironically, it's all the other things. I mean, why must I pay for you to check the car? You should be selling me a car in good condition. And here's the other thing: so many complaints that I get of for cars, newly bought cars, whether they were new or used when they were bought, going horribly wrong straight away. But these people have been charged already 3,000 rand for doing checks, mind you. Like, what checks? I mean, I would say, you can refund me that now if it's itemized, you say, okay, there's 40-point check, right? Okay, I'll have that fee.
It also works in your
back,
favor if there's something wrong with the car to say, you guys said you did a check, so you can't
and you
tell
charged me for it. Yeah.
So what kind of interesting split was there with the Supreme Court of Appeal in terms of this particular decision? I know you said it was complicated, but were any of the judges, swayed to maybe say there shouldn't be any charge at all?
No, this was a unanimous judgment. But earlier, when the case was still going through, there was a High Court judgment, and there was one dissenting judge, Judge Graham Moshana. He disagreed. He said, for dealerships to add fees for a valet service, for example, knowing that the financer was going to add interest to that amount over the term of the contract, 72 months, was, and this is how he put it, the mischief that the legislature seeks to curb by introducing a closed list in terms of Section 102. In other words, you can charge for the petrol, you can charge for the licensing and licensing and registration, and also the fee to spare you going to stand in the queue. They can charge you that fee. And that dissenting judge was saying, leave it to that. Don't be adding all other things. But he was outnumbered, and so that's why this has landed up all the way in the Supreme Court. And yes, they can still charge, but now they have to be.
But contracts these days also go beyond 72 months. There's all sorts of interesting deals with.
Yes, good pickup there, because we now have contracts as long as 8 years, 96 months, which is terrifying. Look, most South Africans...
This is just luxury cars, not like...
No, All sorts of cars, not just
8
high-end
years.
cars. Yeah. And look, most people wouldn't ride out the 8 years. They would sell the car before that 8 years is up. But it's a very long time to commit. And how it happens is we are becoming less and less able to afford cars, right? They're getting more expensive and our income is not expanding or increasing at the same rate. And so that's why you've got all these things happening where, you're extending the term, you've got balloons, and now you've got MFC, which is Nedbank, doing the step payment. So you start off paying 6.5 a month, but next year you're paying 7 something. And for the last few years of that 8 years, you're going to be paying 8.5.
It's ballooned up, yeah.
It's crazy. So yeah, I think all in all, not the win that the regulator wanted, but at least a consolation prize of you don't just slap on the number there and leave it. You got to break it down
And just last off, what's the sage advice? I mean, do you take away all the emotions when you buy your car? I mean, it's a shame for those that are buying their car for the first time because, I mean, it's a good feeling.
It is a good feeling, but it's and everything's moving towards digital age, do everything fast. No, I say buy a car slowly. You're entitled to a quote in terms of the act, and you've got 5 days, 5 business days. I think it's a week, or 5 days anyway, at least 5 days in which to. They must hold that quote and honor that quote, but you get advice. Send it to me. Speak to your parents, your cousin that's in the business, or take your time. Take your time and interrogate everything. What people do is they say, I can afford 4,000 a month or whatever the figure is, and they don't look behind how that F&I and the dealership has got them there, and they really need to do that. And I'm always open invitation. Anybody wants me to look at a quote, I'd happily do it. So you get the advice up front rather than later on when it's too late to fix.
Well, you heard the offer. Consumer Ninja Wendy Nola talking to us there about the on-the-road fees. Be careful when you purchase your next set of wheels. It's time for our Shapeshifter feature, which we regularly have on a Wednesday here on The Money Show. This is where we interview business figures who have successfully adapted and transformed their businesses or careers in the face of changing market conditions and those challenges that we go through in life. Tonight, lights, camera, action. The man we're about to talk to speaks to what is happening here in studio. About 2 lenses facing him and me, and a lot of lights and a whole studio setup that we have here on The Money Show. Aubrey Tau, the force behind Moja and Tau Foods. He works on the food side of things, and he also does TV, which are 2 different worlds, and we'll be asking him how he's connected the two. Aubrey, welcome to The Money Show. Rao Amohela, how are you?
I'm fine. MT, are you good?
I'm good. First thing I want to know, did you always want to be in the lights, in the flashing lights of TV and cameras?
Not really. I wanted just to contribute something to the community.
And it blew up.
Yeah, it just blew up. When it started at school. And when I was at maybe in
were you one of the popular guys?
We are not really. I'm not interested in popularity. I'm interested in creating jobs.
Yeah,
making money, because you have to make money to be able to create jobs. Nothing wrong with that. So I remember when I was at school, I used to sell sweets. It was unbelievable. We can go to a deal and they'll say, this is shocking. Even teachers from the primary to the high school, and the guys will start, there will be a soccer event. I'll just go to town to buy sweets and come to the stadium and sell sweets just to make money. And also I had some of my colleagues to sell on my behalf, peanuts, those type of things. That's how I think entrepreneur learn from when you are young.
Yeah,
you don't just become an entrepreneur when you are at 40s, 30s, 40s. It's very difficult. You need to go through the struggle.
Let's talk about those formative years growing up. Where are you from?
I'm from Carltonville in Wedela, and then is a mine town. Yeah, and the mining industry, they did well for that town. So my father used to work at the mine. So I used to assist my father going to the golf course to carry for those white
Were you
boys.
a caddy?
Yeah, I was caddy. And then it was surprising. Every those white boys who played golf, they used to like me a lot because I used to talk. I said, but boss, you're hitting this thing wrong.
Did you also play a great game?
No,
yourself?
I didn't play it.
But you experienced enough.
Yeah, I mean, I will carry the bag for them and then earn money. And after earning, I'll go and buy food for my family.
That was a lot of responsibility.
It was. And then I enjoy it, Yeah, I enjoy it. I never complain. It was amazing, That's why maybe I'm the favorite in my family.
Do you play golf these days?
No, not at all.
Too much. It's too busy.
No. Look, it's good for those guys who play golf. I like soccer. I like watching soccer as well. I used to play soccer. I mean, we had the coach at James Mapena. He was a superstar from Swallows, James Mapena. I mean, we used to I was one of those lucky players who was selected by James Mapena to be in his team. But sometimes I'll be in the bench because I was not that
I think
that
the bug
than the others.
Was the businesses that you had on the side, distracting you from your football career.
It's true. And then from there, from school, I mean, and I opened, it was very funny because in Carltonville, Kutsong as well. Kutsong is the biggest township, well-known, Merafing. So they call it Merafing. Now, Merafing, never had anything in those days. Youth, they were bored, and then I organized the youth club so that we can talk about, it's very important that those things are giving you direction at youth clubs, and then you talk about what you want to be in future. So, and then after organizing those youth club in Merafing and also Wetela, and then I started arranging a beauty contest, Miss Merafing. And some of the ladies did win Miss Kaizer Chiefs. They work with Bojesik and them as Miss Kaizer Chiefs. So and I used to make a lot of money. Still at school, used to make a lot of money. And then, but I'll be able to use that money developing those people in the youth club. That's who I am.
So you were very pivotal then in community activities.
Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Yes, they were commercial at times because you were making money from these ventures, maybe tickets at the door, but just making sure the youth around you in a mining town have some form of activity. What ambitions did you have, as you were about to leave school?
And look, I came to Joburg. When I came to Joburg with a train, every day I used to come with the train coming back, and I met Jomo Sono. That guy gave me an opportunity to he opened my mind, that guy. I used to travel with Jomo around to the business. And he'd say, Aubrey, stay outside.
Is this Jomo the head of Cosmos now?
Yeah, the head of Cosmos, yeah. Okay. And he just loved me, So, because I used to, I was a talkative guy. And then I will come up with ideas. So, and that's how I met Jomo. And then he liked some of my ideas. So, and they said, no, you are going to work for me because you'll need money as a salary so that you can be able to be here in Joburg and be able to afford pay rent. And that's how I worked for Jomo as a messenger. And then he will go with me around Jomo where I will deliver things for him, for Jomo Cosmos as well. And from there, Jomo had this travel agency with a boxing promoter as well. Those days he was popular, that guy. And they owned that travel agency. And those white ladies, they said, no, Aubrey must come and work for us as a messenger. We like Aubrey. So and then I left Jomo Cosmos, work for that company, which Jomo also owned it. And then I said to those white ladies, look, when people come here, you must make coffee for me. I'll be bringing people to make coffee for me. Like, I have to have an office because perception is also, when
important.
You bring, important.
If you're going to bring clients, then
I'll bring clients. And then they said, no problem, Aubrey, what is your vision? I said, I want to grow as a businessman. And then after that, I brought in but I was also a messenger for them as well. They used to go around where I will deliver tickets for their clients. And then those lovely ladies, I wish I could meet them, So very nice people. So, and then one day I went to, because at that time there were a lot of international teams coming to South Africa. And I had Aubrey promotions. And then I rode to Sporting Lisbon, to bring Sporting Lisbon to South
Portuguese
Africa.
club.
Yeah, Portuguese club. I went to meet the chairman of Sporting Lisbon in South Africa. That's why I met Mpho Molopyane, who introduced me to Ivan Khosa. And then, because Mpho was very close as a Brazilian.
You believe in your life at this point in time? Because you're a young man. You
yes.
And then working and things are happening.
No, yes, I was taking myself seriously.
These are giants you're talking about.
Yes, and then I was taking myself seriously as well.
Yeah.
That's so important, that you have to have a vision, and then you must be able to follow that vision.
And what are those
It's very
lessons?
difficult. So, look, it was so difficult. And then people will say, this young guy, what. But what I've learned is that mostly of these white guys, they don't undermine a person who's young. It's not like our black brothers. Black brothers, we're lucky to have people like Jomo, including Ivan. I will tell you the story about Dr. Ivan, which was so interesting. And then from there, the Sporting Lisbon agreed to come to South Africa. And then that is where I end up at Swallows as well. So I took that letter of Sporting Lisbon, where they said, we give the rights to come to South Africa to this gentleman, because they asked about me from those Portuguese organization, which I met Mpho Molopyane. And then from there, I went to a company called Novo Mundo. Novo Mundo is still one of the biggest travel agency in South Africa for the Portuguese community. I went to that owner, and then I convinced the owner to put a lot of money. He loved Sporting Lisbon. He loved Sporting Lisbon. Luckily, he was also he loved Mpho Molopyane as well. Mpho was a good guy. Yeah, he liked Mpho. And then, unfortunately, the guy loved it. He could not believe it. And that guy said, look, I'm going to give them first-class tickets, because they demanded first-class tickets. They demanded...
this is my team. I'm going to support them.
Yeah, my team.
So were you organizing games for them?
Yeah, I was organizing that game.
Okay.
And then, because also, you must understand, it was a big game. It wasn't like where I used to organize events at school. At school, I brought Stimela. I brought big artists at school, where I made a lot of money as well. So when this guy said, look, Aubrey, you're still young. We are going to get a guy called, that's foolish guy. So I'm sorry to say that, called Jakamo. Jakamo was a foolish man, but a top boxing promoter. When you met Jakamo, that's where I learned that you need to have contracts. You must sign contracts.
So you can't have gentleman agreements.
Yeah, and then we can have gentleman agreement. Jakamo took over the project. And then I brought in Swallows. That is where I met Chabedi. Mr. Chabedi, very nice guy as well. They said, I went with Mpho Molopyane. They said, look, there's an opportunity. Before we went to Chabedi, we went to Dr. Ivan. Dr. Ivan could not believe that Sporting is coming. He said to me, look, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks time, we will have AC Milan coming to play Orlando Pirates. And then unfortunately, I wanted Pirates to play against this big Portuguese team.
Yeah.
It's so huge. And then you must remember, there are a lot of Portuguese during that time as well. A lot of Portuguese community. Huge Portuguese community. And then we're expecting them to fill up the stadium, paying a lot of money for the tickets. So, and then, and he was so supportive, Dr. Ivan. He said, look, if you come up with other ideas, my office will be always open. Which was also humbling, And then after that, we went to Chabedi. He called in Chabedi. He said, Swallows is a big team. Why don't you go and talk to Swallows? Because they are not going to play any team. And then Chiefs, they were going to be playing Manchester United, those type of top teams. And then I went to Swallows to see Chabedi. And then I convinced Chabedi. From there, Jakamo just took over. Suddenly he left me behind. Meetings.
But the team travel, the games happen.
Yeah, the games happening. Now Aubrey is poor behind there, those type of things. And
How
then
tough was that lesson for you?
No, it was a big lesson that, e.g., when I went to Rodney Payment, again, Rodney. When I went to Rodney, I'll tell you the story about Rodney. He's the one who respects Aubrey as well, a lot, Rodney Payment as well. So after that project, I didn't make money. Jakamo, as a crook, he made money, and then he messed up even the tournament. So, and after that, those ladies, they allowed me to use their office at night. They trusted me. I mean, if it was another guy, you could come and steal their things, what. No, they trusted me. And then that is where now I started going late at the office around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, talking to the Americans. And then I approached Morris agents. I said, look, I want to bring Whitney Houston. What do you want, guys? They gave me all the terms. But what happened is that they phoned somebody in South Africa. Who's this person? What? And then it was a little bit confused that they agreed. They said, if you can meet these 5 conditions, we are in. I took that letter. I went to Rodney Payment. When I went to Rodney Payment called his son. He said, this is interesting. This is unbelievable. So Rodney said, let me take over. He was a top boxing promoter. And then Rodney Payment brought in Rolling Stone, those type of things. And then he made a lot of money. So Rodney said, look, Tau, I'm going to take this project over. What do you want? That was the first time a top guy said, what do you want?
The opportunity.
Yeah, that's what I always ask my team. Whether you're an employee, you come with something, I always ask, what do you want? What is in for you? So that you cannot play around with a person. So, and then I said, Rodney, it's up to you because I don't have money. Rodney said, look, I'm going to give you 100K, those type of things. And then it was 22 years back. I was in my late 20s.
That was your great entrepreneurial journey. So how do we jump then to the launch of Moja Love? I know it was CITV before that.
MT, before,
you still needed to get the licensing. I'm just going ahead because I'm looking at the time. Just getting that commercial license to have a network like Moja Love. How was that journey for you?
The journey took, in what I've learned all over these years, including in mining. I know that time is running out empty. In mining, I got in mining with a guy called Jonathan Segal. The Jewish funded me with a lot of money for African soccer. Moja Love is not the first project which I did. There was a big company called Moja Love, African soccer, and also CAF Awards. I went with an idea to CAF, presented to the executive. They gave me exclusivity, and I appointed Jessica Mtaung to run the project. She ran it very well for the past 3 years. We made a lot of money. She made a lot of money as well. So and Moja Love came at the last mile of the TV one. So, and then from there, I invested that money into a mining coal company in Brits, Platcro. We sold that company for 20 million rand to Jubilee. Jubilee still listed in JSE, still making a lot of money, and they're making a lot of money from that chrome project. And then it was 20 years back. So, and after that, we've invested that money, where now we also bid for the chrome dams from Patrice Motsepe mine. We did win of those Patrice Motsepe mine. We had Glencore coming in, investing 700 million, agreed. But the market, it was all over the world, the market fell, and then that project just died. It was so bad.
So why did you pivot then to the creative industry?
Because I had also, because I did like I'm an entrepreneur. I was lucky. So I saw the opportunity that there's in South Africa, a lot of people, they don't know a lot about African football. That is why I created African soccer. And from there, I went to create CAF Awards. The CAF Awards, it was sold to a mobile company in Nigeria. From there, I said, I'm not going to anymore. I'm not going to be able to do this smaller project. I want to do a big project. I applied for the push for ICASA for the license. It took years. The frustration there, it was unbelievable.
We'll talk about that just coming up. Aubrey Tau, founder of Moja Love and Tau Foods, in conversation with us as the Shapeshifter. We're in conversation with our Shapeshifters tonight. Aubrey Tau, the founder of Moja Love and Tau Foods. You've told us a lot of stories around your entrepreneurial journey and how tough it was to start Moja Love. Somebody who's listening to us now and says, okay, this is a pioneer in terms of business. What would you tell them as Aubrey Tau? Is it just a matter of starting or finding the money?
Look, South Africa is very difficult for entrepreneurs to succeed because the environment doesn't allow them. You know, we have, to be honest, I'm sorry, we have a messed up government. They don't invest in the youth. They're just messed up. So it's so difficult for these young people to be able to start businesses, create jobs. And they back to Moja Love. I mean, I had to. It was so difficult just to get the license. It took us 4 years. Imagine 4 years without doing anything, just running after ICASA. That's so bad, man. You know, I hope the generation which will come in future, they will be able to get things, licenses, regulation, so that they can be able to, you know, we just have messed up things. It's just messed up. And then all the politicians, they don't understand it. You know, just look at their clueless. You know, Rupert, he said, you know, a person who started a business in the past 20 years from scratch, not where as a BEE, from scratch and succeed, I'll shake that person because it's very difficult. But apart from that, look, I must be thankful to MultiChoice. We fought battles with MultiChoice. We fought. It was so hard that they didn't even want to see me in their doors. But now they love me. They like to kiss me. Aubrey. They want to kiss me. Yes, for sure.
The viewership.
We are bringing the team. We've got a great team, great talented team at Moja Lab. We work like a machine. It's like a Barcelona team.
So I'll give you the last word then. What do you say to young people?
Yeah, for young people, I will say, look, don't get discouraged. Yeah, but make sure, because South Africa is tough, make sure that you got funding.
Yeah.
Make sure that you go and knock to those guys who are successful.
Can they come to you for funding?
Definitely, for sure, they can come to me for if they've got great ideas. Yeah. I love great ideas. Definitely, I will put money.
Unfortunately, having run out of time, it definitely, I guess we should have again here on The Money Show, Shapeshifter, Aubrey Tau, founder of Moja Love and Tau Foods, talking about his entrepreneurial journey and some of the challenges he faced going into business.